Yes. Yes, indeed. It's Tom Shillue in for Will Cain in Will Cain country. I am in his country today, and I think he's had guest hosts all week. Aaron Berg. Maybe we got some interesting ones coming up, like Michael Malice. But the most interesting of all, and probably the best suited to guest for Will Cain, is Tom Shillue, yours truly, today on St. Patrick's Day. And you are listening to this podcast however you listen to it, whether you listen to it live or on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify, wherever you get your fine podcasts. Do you remember that in the old days? This is something that a certain listener is going to remember when they would have products and they would say, you can get it wherever fine books are sold. They would add the fine to the product. See, say it was a book, it was a special coffee table book that was for finer people, or a cookbook that was for those with discerning taste. They would say, purchase it wherever, at Walden Books or wherever fine books are sold.
Walden Books.
Yeah, Walden Book. The idea that it was a certain kind of upscale product. I even think they had fine records, or if say it was some type of, I don't know, I can't think of what a fine record would be, but they would upgrade it because you can get
Sinatra.
Yeah, Frank Sinatra, the Capitol years, wherever fine records are sold, because you can go to Walmart and you can get, a record or a book, or you could go to Bradley's, they had a book section, but fine books you could only get at Walden Books. So I don't know why I said that fine. It's actually Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can get fine podcasts or lousy ones. Anybody can do it, but not.
There's plenty of those.
Yeah, but not anybody can do it well. So it's St. Patrick's Day. It's a great day, and I've approached it in a great way. I went into Grand Central today, and then coming across to Fox News, you got to walk across town. I always go uptown. I get out of the back of the train, and you walk across to Fox News here on 48th Street. But today I wised up because last year I got all fouled up coming across town because of the St. Patrick's Day parade, and I had to do like Harrison Ford in The Fugitive, and I had to actually pretend that I was in the parade. So I jumped in with my...
I tried.
Yeah. Well, look, you got a face like the map of Ireland, right? Did you have your Irish sweater or your green vest or whatever?
I messed up. I did not. I should have dressed more Irish.
Yeah. So last year I had an Irish sweater on. And so I did a Harrison Ford. I jumped in with the, the bagpipe players and everything, like I was support for the bagpipe guys. And I walked
tuner
with them for one block, and then I slipped out the other side. Today I got into Grand Central, and I went down to all the way to 42nd Street, and I went across on the 7 train to 6th Avenue and walked up, so I was able to avoid the parade. Not that I want to avoid the parade. I love my people. I'm of Irish heritage, but you got to get to work, right? We got a job to do here in media, and I have a guest that is very special, and I like to talk to him. I've done podcasts with him, but I don't think I've ever had Mark Changizi on Fox News or one of our TV or radio, but I wanted to get him today because I'm reading his latest book. Mark Changizi, author of Motorcycle Mind. He's a cognitive scientist. He's a smart guy. He's a prominent guy on Twitter. Twitter is where I spend a lot of my time and I get a lot of my news, and he's kind of like he's in my feed, and I read him all the time. But I've been reading his book, and it's quite interesting, and we're going to talk about it today. Mark Changizi, we got you on the line. How you doing?
Good. I'm one of the finer guests that you'll find on this podcast, so it's great to be here.
It's great. And you are a cognitive scientist. You are a very, I think, what did you go to? A Rensselaer? Is that right?
Well, I was a professor at Rensselaer in the Department of Cognitive Science. I was undergrad at University of Virginia, physics, math, and then University of Maryland for a PhD in math. And I became a cognitive scientist, I'm a theorist in the field of sort of neuroscience, evolutionary biology, cognitive science. Why are we the way that we are cognitively, biologically, culturally, things like this, sort of why questions.
Yeah. And so let's go over a couple of your areas of expertise, because I've seen different videos. You've had kind of science moments, things you do, like some shorts on short videos on X or YouTube. but you've done in the field of vision. You have you've talked about, and it's something I don't know about, so I'm not even going to try to describe it. But it's something to do with the spectrum of light and vision, and you have I think you've invented some kind of vein glasses. Is that right? Can you explain that to me?
Yeah, as a backup for that, this comes out of a 2006 discovery of mine when I was at Caltech about why we have color vision. Your dog, your bunny rabbits, horses don't have color vision. They do have blue, yellow as one dimension, and then they've got grayscale as their second dimension. But we primates, some of us primates, have a third dimension, red, green. In fact, red and green. And that distinction is only possible with our kind of color vision. And for 100 years, they thought that this kind of red-green vision that we primates, some of us primates had something to do with fruits or leaves in the forest. And 20 years ago, I was able to show that, no, it has nothing to do with that. It's a very peculiar kind of third dimension. Instead of having like RGB, where the third one on your cameras is sort of uniformly distributed over the spectrum, if these are the two spectral sort of sensitivities across the spectrum for bunny rabbits and horses and so forth, our other high wavelength sensitive cone is like right next to it. But it turns out you have to have exactly this peculiar kind of cone sensitivity across the spectrum if you want to sense blood under the skin. So our red-green vision, our color vision that we primates have, is actually optimized to see hemoglobin change its oxygenation under the skin, to see oxygenated blood and variations of it. It's an empath sense. So this was 20 years ago. Really, color vision and seeing emotions are about the same thing. That's why colors are such an emotional, evocative thing, is because they really are about sensing the emotions on bare skin. And it's also why color vision and nakedness are opposite sides of the same coin. The primates that don't have color vision are furry-faced like your typical dog. The primates with color vision are naked-faced, naked-rumped, naked chests, all these sort of bare spots to signal their emotional expression, so to speak, through this modality.
So seeing the blood is an emotional thing. It's not like because you would expect a predator would want to be able to see see blood, right? Because they're hunting, but it doesn't have to do with that. You're saying that we're attuned to seeing emotional reactions in people through their.
That's right.
Yeah.
Right. So in the beginning, you can imagine when someone had an accidental sort of, in the beginning, it was probably a mutation, some dog-like, ancestor of dog-like in the sense of having just two dimensions of color. Suddenly they had this extra sense that was in this weird spot. But it turns out that particular animal and the lineage there was able to see a little bit better the little bare spots that would have been around the mouth and, where there was a little bit of lack of hair. They would have had a little bit of a leg up in reading that other individuals. And so it was selected for. But then over time, then you could purposely signaling, like actually activating in various ways capillaries to modulate as a function of different kinds of expressive states. So then over time we lost fur and we started to purposely, that is, we're not consciously able to signal in this particular modality the way that we are with our facial expressions, but it became something that the body evolved to be able to purposely signal, in some sense, intentionally tell other people about. And it's a very honest signal because, for example, if you and I are in a fight and you're winning, and I'm about to collapse, I can't, I might be able to put on a really aggressive face, but the fact that I'm all ash and white is going to give it away. I can't get oxygenated red blood to my face any longer because I'm literally about to pass out. So it's an honest signal in a way that facial expressions might not be.
Yeah. So these Vino glasses, are they that you have these? Do these help doctors actually see people who have, whose veins aren't as prominent as they need to be, or something like that?
Yeah. So basically, the reason that all of us who have color vision, unless you're colorblind, can see veins at all is because we have this ability. There are very subtle differences between the red part, sort of the blushy part of your skin, the glowing red parts, and the vein parts. So there are these very subtle. If you took photographs, so to speak, of each part individually, the green parts or the bluish green parts alone, and you just put it up on a screen, it looks like your skin color. It only seems green when it's in contrast to the slightly tinted redder part of your flesh next to it. They're actually effectively the same, but this subtle difference our eyes can see because of this specific peculiar kind of color vision. And so we are all able to see it. But our technology, without any batteries or anything, as long as you've got good white light, then it augments this color capability that we have. It also helps colorblind folks, so mostly men who are colorblind. There's tons of these products that just sell bullcrap colored glasses that don't, in fact, augment your ability to see these emotion signals. Ours are the only color blindness our only technology that can actually help colorblindness people, because it's the only one that augments the very signal that we discovered 20 years ago, that I discovered 20 years ago, is what color vision is for. So yeah, this technology is used by, you just put it on as glasses, protective eyewear for medical situations. But as long as there's good white light, you can see veins more clearly for nurses and paramedics. Yeah, Vino optics. Yeah.
Vino optics. Okay, the one more question on color before we get to the motorcycle mind, and that is, you mentioned about dogs. I was actually surprised. I didn't know this, but when my dog plays fetch, a lot of the doggy balls are orange, and you throw it in the field, and then you can see it. It's an orange ball out in the green yard. But for the dog, he doesn't see it. My dog doesn't know. He can't see. He could actually see a green tennis ball. I think this is my observation of my own dog. My dog can see a green tennis ball in the grass better than an orange one. Is that right?
Well, roughly speaking, an orange is just a mix of red and yellow, right? So it's sort of a nice combination of red and yellow gives you orange. So the red portion of it alone would be indistinguishable from a pure green out there that has no yellow or blue in it. But there's still a significant yellow component in that orange ball, which it can see. So it can just, in principle, it can distinguish that from the grass. Then again, the grass might be have a significant yellow component too, because it doesn't look very green to it. It'll just sort of look yellowish or bluish. Yeah. So it could have exactly the amount of yellow that the orange ball has yellow, in which case it's completely indistinguishable. But it's not. So it can see orange on it can see the yellow of the orange, but the key is whether it can see that in contrast to whatever other thing is around it.
Yeah, that's interesting. And it, essentially, I think in most cases, the dog goes by smell anyway. So when the ball is thrown, Martha will run out there and sniff around, and then finally find the ball. It doesn't have to do with sight, but it's all very fascinating.
Martha, huh?
Yeah, Martha the dog. Yeah, she's
very human name there.
Yeah, I know. So, Mark, the motorcycle mind. I wanted to. I didn't even bring it with me. I had a couple of notes in it at home, but that's good because when I'm doing an interview, I don't like to get bogged down with a book. So you got it right there, okay? And the opening pages, okay? Something struck me when it was on the first page. Now let's talk about this. I'm going to kind of give you the lead and then kind of let you run with it. Essentially, we're talking about 3 wheels when you're a little kid. And then you get the 2 wheels, and then later on you're driving around in a car with the 4 wheels. But then the line that hit me, but we always knew 2 wheels is king, right? Why is that? Why is that?
Look, I mean, there's the broader hint at some of the broader story about 2 wheels, and I think one of the reasons that people love motorcycles, and it's hard to explain to non-motorcyclists the extent to which you can become one with a motorcycle. And in some sense, this is the follow-up book to Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, which is sort of spiritual but it didn't get into the sort of a cognitive science and the story about how it is that a human and a bike can become a single organism is what really this book is about. And there's a long history in mythology of humans becoming quadrupeds, and I mean, and specifically wolves or altered states where they go into these sort of sensory deprivation chambers, and then he comes out as like a 1980s movie, and William Hurt comes out, and suddenly he's moving around like a werewolf kind of thing. And then, of course, there's werewolf movies, and there's lots of mythology of the ability to move like a dog or a horse, because there's a level of the ability to locomote, so to speak, that's just way beyond anything humans can do. And you might think, well, those are 4-legged animals, but there's a sense in which a dog or a deer or is really a 2-wheeled animal. You have 2 front legs that are going like this. They're hitting the ground. They're kind of a simple wheel in the sense that they've got 2 parts alternately hitting in cycles, and the back also are alternating, and they're often running effectively hitting the ground directly in front of one another, right? So you effectively on a motorcycle have what is like a dog or a horse-like behavior in the sense of your one wheel is mimicking these two arms moving like this. And so your ability to move and lean with it and deal with the physics and the kind of physics that comes for free. There's a kind of physics that happens on a bike that people don't get, that in order to turn right, you actually don't turn at all. You just push the wheel in the opposite direction. But a lot of this physics that comes for free happens naturally in an animal like a dog or a horse, as opposed to another kind of four-legged animal, which would be, let's say, a lizard. Lizards have their arms, instead of ventrally projected, they're dorsally projected. And in which case you're like, like this, like bo, bo, bo. Now you've got basically one arm off to the front right that's acting like a wheel, alternated, hitting the ground, and another way off to the left, alternating, and another back in front. You basically have a car in that case. And if you've ever watched a lizard or an alligator, nobody fantasizes about running like a lizard. That's just not exciting. You might imagine gnashing your teeth and killing somebody as an alligator, but locomotion and having dreams about locomoting like a lizard, these kinds are not anything that anybody would want. But a motorcycle lets you really become a wolf, and it gives you a kind of freedom and speed and power. And much of the book is trying to show how you really become one, how it mimics the way that you actually move your own body, how it happens for free moving its body, and even how emotionally we express in the language of the street. We naturally express in the same kinds of, my most recent book before the motorcycle book was how we, answering Darwin's question about how we came to have emotional expressions, what they in fact mean, how they work. And you can work out exactly the space of human emotional expressions, how they're effectively bets, like in poker. You're basically pushing social capital chips that you can lose, that you become humiliated. And the space of those emotions that we know instinctively how to do, you do that on the motorcycle by virtue of the sounds that you make, because you have multiple dimensions, because you've got the clutch. It happens in any stick shift car, but no one has stick shift cars anymore. But it's part of the nature of it that you can signal your emotional expressions through the sounds of the bike, through these two dimensions of emotional expressiveness. And they're exactly the language that the emotional expressions need to be for the street. So there's sort of this, the best way to describe it is I've got a host of discoveries in perception and understanding how we embed ourselves with the world as humans. And so the book, it takes this sort of person who has this wisdom of thinking about this for 30, 40 years, and then applies it to motorcycle world, where I've become a motorcycle for the last 6 or so years. And I realized, oh my gosh, like, because of this background that I have as a scientist who's done this for 30 years, I suddenly have all of these insights in terms of how we become one with the bike, the kinds of insights that a typical person wouldn't. They know in their bones it's happening, but they don't know how to flesh it out because they haven't been an OCD scientist thinking about these things for 30 years.
Yeah. Before I got your book, it was probably, I don't know, sometime between the COVID hysteria and now. I was alone, and I was, just, I don't know what I was doing, having a cup of coffee and thinking. And I got this little sense of worry in my, upper thoracic region. Sometimes when you have these realizations, and I thought to myself, I might never have a motorcycle. Like, I always thought in my head as a kid, one day I'll be a motorcyclist. You know what I mean? It was like this idea, you'd see the motorcyclists go by, and you think, well, I'm a kid now, but one day I'll be a motorcycle rider. And then maybe I'll be a little older and I'll get a car or whatever. But there was always this idea that I would be a motorcyclist. And then I thought to myself, maybe I never will be, because I never have, I never got a motorcycle. And is it your contention that men, like we all have this idea that we're going to be a motorcyclist and, and we got to do it at some point?
I mean, I think a lot of people, certainly, even if you've decided that it's not for me, it's not safe, or you have there's this implicit desire when you see a motorcycle parked, when they go by and they're expressively, making these sort of expressive sounds when they go by, you would love to do it. You have this respect for this bike and just this awe over it. And I think that a lot of people beat themselves into the idea that they're not going to do it because it's not safe. And I think, it's important to remember, like, people will say, well, it's 30 times more dangerous to ride a motorcycle than it is to be in a car. Now, first of all, let's take that at face value for a second, and it's not itself true because you're selecting amongst that 30 times as all of these young guys on sport bikes who are doing all crazy kinds of stuff, right?
Yeah.
You've seen these videos. That's not the normal motorcycles. So it's including the most crazy stuff. So you'd have to take out all of that, in which case, obviously, it's still going to be more dangerous. Maybe it's 10 times more dangerous than a car once you take out all of those guys. But did you know that it's 66 times more dangerous to take your car than it is to take the bus? So next time someone tells you, oh, don't get a motorcycle because it's so dangerous, you could say, honey, because it's always a guy talking to his wife, honey, I think you should take the bus. Why would I take the bus? It's 66 times more safe than taking your car. Well, that's missing the point, right? The point is that life, first of all, there's this comparison. We always take risks because of the convenience or because of the pure joy that it brings. And motorcycles bring both. I live in the city of Miami. The entire city of Miami becomes very small with a motorcycle. I can get anywhere at any time because you're lane splitting constantly. And so the city becomes really small. And that's a great joy to be able to get through the city anywhere at any time. But also there's just the joy from the ride, which, the book is really about that. There's nothing more exciting than becoming a single creature that has these kinds of superpowers, these kinds of wolf kinds of superpowers. And these are the kinds of things that you live life for. And you're willing to take these extra risks for these kinds of utility, these sorts of utilities or these benefits.
Yeah. I bet there's some people listening who are like, you keep referring to the wolf thing, and we just talked about the guys, because generally it is let's face it, motorcycles, it's like a guy thing, right? There are women, obviously, who love motorcycles, but it's one of those things that guys fantasize about, and they want to be a part of it. Is this like a macho thing? You keep referring to the wolf and whatever, and there might be someone out there who's like, I don't need any of that in my life. I don't need to be a wolf. What would you say to them?
Well, I mean, like a lot of people don't need to ski. They don't need to do some of the really thrilling things in life. Fine, that's fine. But there's a real joy in doing powerful things in life, and so it's one of these things that maybe some people don't want that. I'm not convinced that they don't want it. I think that sometimes they have trepidation, and they've convinced themselves that having that kind of stuff is only dangerous and not the kind of thing that they want. But if I could, put them on at least behind me, they might appreciate, this is a lot of fun. I really enjoy this. Now, my wife, doesn't really want to be a rider. She's a very athletic person. It's not like she couldn't, but she really enjoys being on the back with me. And in the beginning, when we would lane split, she was slow down. But now, if there's a gap between the semi and some little car, that within 1 second I could have made it. She'd be like, "Why aren't you through that? Get through those cars, right?" So there's a real joy for her to be the person in the back, and there's a real joy, by the way, as a couple. When we have a little bit of a fight, as soon as you're on the bike, you're kind of together. The three of us, the bike and my wife and I, are one, and then you're not mad at each other because you're sort of all this sort of one creature.
Yeah.
So there's a real joy as a couple having a bike.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said at the beginning about shifting the vehicle, and not a lot of people. I have a standard shift car. I got a Fiat 500, so it's a little, it's not the most manly car in the world. It's kind of a little European type of car, but it's a standard. I learned on a standard when I was young, and then I went to automatics, and I've been driving them my whole life. And then I got this car, and I'm telling my wife and kids, my wife drives a standard as well, but I'm teaching my daughters how to drive it, and it's a pain to them. They say, "Dad, why are you driving this car? It's a pain." And I tell them it is so much more enjoyable to drive a standard car. You can feel the road. You're thinking like, look, just compared to a motorcycle, you don't feel the road. But driving a shift car, it's a little bit on the way to being a motorcycle, right? Because you're in control of the vehicle. Am I right about that?
Right. Yeah. And a lot of people don't understand. Stick shift. Well, now there's paddle shifters, or now there's automatics that shift so fast that they're faster and they can accelerate. That's not the point of a standard a manual transmission. The benefits that a manual transmission give you is greater. So, for example, if you're on the highway and there's nobody on the highway at all, and I'm in a car, let's say, and I've got 6 gears, I can be in 6th gear. That's fine. And I can't accelerate very quickly in 6th gear, nor when I pull off the accelerator doesn't have much of an engine braking because it's in a very high gear. But imagine suddenly we're still going 70 miles per hour, but suddenly lots of cars come in and it's a highly dense, same speed situation. Well, now I might be happier to be in a fifth gear or even a fourth gear because now small accelerations bring great great jerk. There's the change in speed that I get by virtue of a small twitch is a lot. And then when I pull off on the accelerator, I get a lot of braking, engine braking for free. So in one, without having to go to the brake, just small things are really jerky faster. And I need that because I'm in a more tense situation where I need to have that quick control. And I don't need that in the earlier case. So this is same speed, but I've changed my emotional state in some sense. My underlying emotional state is quite different. Because same thing at a bar, I'm relaxed at the bar, and then suddenly someone comes in and says, "Hey, who's the boss around here?" Whatever. Suddenly you're heightened because now your engine is running on the inside because you might have to act, and the whole drama of the situation has changed, but you're still sitting there cool as a cucumber from the outside, but you're not, in fact, the same. And so motorcycles and manual transmissions have the real sense of, and in fact, they're perfectly analogous to the kind of emotions and the emotional expressions of which we can choose or choose not to convey to others.
You know, I'm wondering if people listening are thinking that this kind of stuff is bizarre or kind of fruity. The idea of like, oh, because you keep talking about the emotional states, and I totally know what you're talking about. To me, driving the standard car is, and any car really, motor vehicles have a way of putting you in an emotional state. And I'm imagining, because I don't know, because I'm not a motorcycle rider, but some of the things you get to in the book about becoming one with the motorcycle have to do with the emotional states of traveling and of motor. I don't get that same feeling, and this is why I do admire the technology of electric cars, but I don't have any emotional state that I'm able to reach in an electric vehicle. And
No.
Is this why I just find the electric vehicle future to be one that does not excite me at all?
Yeah, I have the same, and I agree. If you're not someone who's driven a manual, some of this stuff is going right over your head. But in addition to the physics of a car being more like a lizard as opposed to on a motorcycle, but more generally, manual transmission, whether it's a car or a motorcycle compared to automatics are also like lizards emotionally. They're just sort of zero-dimensional, dumb, socially dumb creatures that just move along and can't signal, can't change their internal state. Whereas this is why it's so interesting to have motorcycles are super interesting. And in Brickell and in Miami, that just all the sounds from the motorcycles or the manual transmissions, all these souped up cars with their flap, 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 these massively loud kinds of sounds that they make. Then most of them are stick shift. And it's always drama to watch these stick shift cars or motorcycles go by because they can signal. Either they're purposely signaling, saying, "Look at me, I'm so expensive and cool," or whatever they're saying when they go to the city. But sometimes they're just signaling to other drivers, like in actual situations, like "I'm here," or "I'm going to go ahead," or "I'm letting you go ahead." All of these things you can signal by virtue of various combinations of the clutch and which gear you're in relative to your speed and so on.
Yeah. So Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, I was planning on mentioning it, and then you mentioned it at the beginning, and I was wondering, I wonder if Mark is going to say, "Oh, that book, that's the bane of our existence, Motorcycle Ride. We don't like that book." Thing is, I read this when I was in high school, and the
Me
book...
too. It was high school, yeah.
Yeah. Now, the book changed my life, and then I had this idea that perhaps that book was, like a lot of things that you did when you were a teenager, you look back and you think, "Oh, that didn't hold up as well." So I went and reread it, and it holds up, okay? I love that book. It's not a macho book, though. The thing about that book that was such a revelation to me is the way he was able to... It's a book of philosophy, and this is how it changed my thinking. The way that he described... Because up until that time, I was not the kind of guy who liked to fix things. I said, "You fix it," and I want to experience it. Like, I don't want to fix a computer. I want to use a computer. You nerds, you fix the computer, right? I want to use a radio. I don't need to know how to radio works, right? And I was the kind of guy who get frustrated. "Oh, this darn car, you kick the wheel, and then you go get it fixed." This what was his name? Pirsig, Robert Pirsig, was it the author?
Yeah.
He talks about how you can't really use these things. You can't use a motorcycle unless you know how to repair it. And he uses philosophy and a lot of patience to express that. And at first I resisted it, but then I finally bought it. And I wanted to get your take on the book if it had such a profound effect. I'm not a motorcycle rider, but the book had a profound effect on the way that I thought about the world, and I'm wondering if you had that similar experience.
I mean, I haven't read it since I was 17, 16 years old, actually. I've looked at little bits and pieces of it since then. I'd say it didn't have that effect on me. I mean, at the end of the day, I'm a theorist. I'm a Carl Sagan Cosmos kid who went into physics because I wanted to answer the questions to the universe. And there was other kinds of physics kids that went into physics because they like to pull apart their radios and put them back together again. Whereas I went into physics because I was all starry-eyed and I want to understand, why is there a universe at all, right? So I'm in sort of, to my bones, I'm a theorist, not a take it apart person and putting it back again, together again. I am about taking apart the UX experience in some sense, the experience of the ride, and picking apart what it means, what all of the kind of inputs and outputs and the connection with the world around you and how the whole thing fits as a holistic thing. That's the sense in which I'm picking apart the machine, is in this perceptual motor experiential sense, rather than the taking it physically apart sense.
Yeah. Well, listen, I am fascinated by this stuff. I think your book is great. I like the like I said, the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, the philosophical side of it. And your book, yeah, it's more not as philosophical, but the emotional side of it. And I hope that our listeners are as fascinated as I am. I think some people are going to think this whole conversation is very goofy. And if that's the case, you can go ahead and send an email to Will Cain and complain, why did you let this weirdo take over your podcast? But it's great. And before I let you go, I thought I would ask you about Iran, because you are, was it mother side or father side? You do have, you are Persian or half Persian, am I right?
That's right. My father's from Shiraz. My wife is Iranian. My family's all still, many of them still back in Iran, and my wife's family's all there. Yeah.
Yes. Wow. Okay. So perhaps you could speak to that. Everyone is talking. We got a lot of guests on Fox News talking about Iran. We have military specialists. We have, world politics. We have Middle Eastern specialists. But I've seen some tweets of yours, kind of going back and forth with people about the war. But I actually want to talk to you about the, what would you call it? The Iranian diaspora. What do people who have family in this region, what are they thinking now? What are, this has been something, Iran for me, it was 1979, I was about 12, 13 years old. And this has been an issue. I had a friend whose father was taken hostage in the Iranian hostage crisis. So this has been such a long time historical story. And now we always thought, are we going to be at war with Iran at some point? And now we are. And so what are people thinking, people that you know, et cetera?
Well, I mean, the first thing that practically every Iranian will tell you is that you're not at war with Iran. The United States and Israel and other surrounding Arab nations are at war with the Islamic Republic. The vast majority of Iranians, probably 85 million of the 90 million or more, are unequivocally, as conspicuously as possible, in support of this war and this rescue mission. Those of us in the diaspora believe it's in America's interest, and we want it. The thing that has been bugging us the most are the people who are pretending as if Iranians are upset that we're being attacked. No, every day, every Iranian that any of us know is worried when they hear the bombs stop. They say, the worst thing that they can possibly imagine is that this ends and the regime, some leftovers, are still in place to continue just doing the same sorts of things they have, but starting a little bit more from scratch. No, they want this to happen. And any collateral damage is going to be tragic, but the bigger tragedy would be that it's not finished. And they are happier than they have ever been to watch Khamenei killed. Literally, there's not been a happier moment in 47 years. And I can show you video after video of just people crying, so happy that you can barely recognize it as joy. And almost happier than that to watch the Basiji being destroyed in various levels, including sort of the last 12 hours ago. So we're hoping that I don't want to get into a big, there's not enough time to get into the whole issue. But if you're going to be anti-war, don't say false things about what the people on the ground want. And unlike a lot of other places where there's been attempts at interventions, interventions are useless if the folks on the ground are still with the regime. Like, unfortunately for Gazans, there's too much support for Hamas. It's like taking buckets of water in a flood and from the sidewalks and putting it back into the river when the river has just flooded. It's just going to rebuild again. But in Iran, this is not the case. The prisoner's dilemma of totalitarianism has been broken in the last year. Everybody knows that everybody else knows that they're all hating the Islamic Republic and the regime, and so everybody's on the streets outwardly saying we hate the regime. The people who are afraid to speak are now the regime supporters who are afraid that their houses will get burned down if they're known to be regime supporters. So you have an entire populace that's ready to take over, and I think soon will.
Yeah, and so we saw before the invasion, before the attacks, and we saw so many demonstrations in the street. There were, pro-freedom demonstrations, right? And then there was the crackdown with tens of thousands of people killed by the regime, right? Then we have the action taken by the U.S. and Israel. And then you saw these protesters coming out, and I saw a lot of people who were against the war and against the president's action, the U.S. action, coming out and saying, look at all these people. The streets are now filled with pro-regime demonstrators. So how, astroturf are those demonstrations? There seems to be a lot of people out there demonstrating for the regime. Are they all in fear for their life? Are they kind of putting on a show for them?
In most cases, these people aren't even Iranians. They're the same crews that showed up to the Free Palestine demonstrations the entire time. Free Palestine and Free Iran are completely opposite movements. Free Palestine is a pro-Islamist movement which doesn't have the Gazans' interests at heart. Among the Gazans, just like amongst the Iranian people, for all of these years, what did we know about the Iranian people? All that we heard was death to America, death to Israel. But inside Iran was a vast majority that hated the regime, but you couldn't hear them. And to the extent that you could, it's because we have we're one, much larger than Gaza, and we have this massive diaspora, which are all over the world and well off and doing well. Whereas Gazans, and it could be 70% that don't want Hamas, it might only be 40%, we don't know the numbers, but their voice, they don't have the same kind of voice from the diaspora. They don't have any kind of voice in there. Anybody who speaks up, and I've got threads of these people speaking out against Hamas over the last 2.5 years. Some of these people are now known to be dead. Nobody can speak out outside of the country or inside the country because they all know where they live because it's a tiny place relative to Iran. So Free Palestine meant subjugating their voices and presuming that Hamas spoke for them, which would be like presuming that the Islamic Republic spoke for Iranians, when in fact they are both symmetric, brutal oppressors and massacring their people. And they both then wage war on Israel. And Free Palestine tried to wash and clean these Islamists and make them the romanticized freedom fighters. And it's impossible for them to try to do this for the Islamic Republic because the Iranian voices are too strong. We're not going to stand for it. A free Iran and the voice of Iranians is a massive threat to the Free Palestine movement because it reveals that they took sides with the Islamists, not with Gazans. Gazans are exactly like Iranians, other than some quantitative differences in terms of their ability to speak for themselves. And the Iranian voices but this is why they hate us. You know what Iranians are now? We're Jews. We've been treated, this is the most amazing thing. Iranians from Iran getting on VPNs, and they're now like, how is it that we are now deemed Jews? They're the good goy. This is the kind of stuff that Iranians, they're just like pulling their hair out as I am. Like suddenly they hate us just as they hate Jews. Why? Because we are a threat to the narrative that they're on the side of good. We show that they are, in fact, the baddies.
Mm-hmm. Now, we saw these the women's soccer players who were trying to defect, and now a lot of them are going back because they're worried about their families, I think, have been captured, or they're in trouble, right? They're imprisoned. You're outspoken. Your own family, have you had any? Is there any relatives of yours who have gotten in trouble because you're outspoken in the U.S.?
I don't talk to them about anything specific, so there's no paper trail.
Mm-hmm.
My wife is a little bit less like I am in this regard, but my attitude has been, one, there's so many, there's literally 8 million diaspora speaking about this. There's just too little of them and too many of us for them to possibly spend time to be able to do anything. And two, I'm not going to be let people use my family as a hostage and let me stop. If I were to stop or ever suggest that I would stop, this is what would only encourage them to take our family members as hostage. No, I wouldn't stop.
Yeah. Okay, Mark Changizi, I want to remind the listeners you're on X at Mark Changizi, right? Mark?
That's right. YouTube as well. Yep.
Yep. Follow him. He's one of the most interesting guys on X, whether it's politics, whether it's motorcycles, whether it's science moments. It's great to talk to you, and I hope other people follow you.
It's great to be here. One of the finest guest hosts that this podcast has ever had.
That is fantastic. Mark Changizi, thanks for being with us. We're going to take a break here on Will Cain Country, and we will be right back. It is Tom Shillue, and I got my glasses on for those who are watching. I got the reading glasses on because we're going to get into some real
It means business.
news here. That's right. When I mean business. Happy St. Patrick's Day. It's a great day. And, why don't we let's start here by going down memory lane of St. Patrick's Day. It's like you remember the Ghost of Christmas Past? There's like the leprechaun of St. Patrick's Day past.
Yeah.
Do we want to do the? Do you have the clip of the news story? With the sketch artist.
One of the best.
Yeah. What is that one called?
Leprechaun.
Yeah, the
Alabama leprechaun.
The Alabama leprechaun.
That's
Play
right.
that clip, would you?
Me, it look like a leprechaun to me. All I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else in the leprechaun say yeah?
This amateur sketch resembles what many of you say the leprechaun looks like.
Could be a crackhead who got hold to the wrong stuff. And it told him to get up in a tree and play a leprechaun.
I'm gonna run a backhoe and uproot that tree. I want to know where to go. I want to go. Give me the go. I want to go.
This is Brian Johnson, NBC 15 News.
People will do anything for a pot of gold. I mean, anything.
You know what I like? I like the amateur sketch of the leprechaun. It looks like somebody got a really good look at it and got that good drawing out there.
Who did that? I want to know who sketched that.
I don't know. Maybe Brian sketched it.
Doodling.
That was a good story.
I still don't know what happened in that story. I remember when the story broke. How long ago was that, guys?
What was that?
It's the 20th anniversary.
Oh, my gosh. 20th anniversary. But it's not as if this was pre-internet days. We had the internet back then in 20 years
Early
ago.
YouTube.
Yeah. And so we were all watching this video, but I don't, unlike the bed intruder, you remember that, they hide your wife, hide your kids. Yeah, we know what happened there. That was sadly, it was an attempted rape, and that thing went viral, because there was a guy who was warning people of a sexual offender, right? In this case, was the leprechaun, was he a sexual offender? Was he a peeping Tom? Was he looking at people from the boughs of this tree? What was going on with him?
I would guess the someone on drugs theory might be right.
Yeah.
Just running around, a little amped up. Maybe saying they're a leprechaun. They could have said they're a leprechaun and they had gold, but not factual.
Yeah. So he did claim to be a leprechaun, or is it just somebody with a little pork pie hat on and then, it went from there?
Yeah. Could have gone. What do you think, Patrick?
Well, we don't know because they claimed that every time they looked up in the tree or shined a light, it would disappear. So maybe it was just
Sounds like
supernatural.
Yeah. Could be. I know they were saying, the woman said it may be a crackhead, but maybe the crack was being enjoyed by them.
Yeah.
Well,
That's true.
Somebody should do
The
a
Bad
follow-up.
Batch.
Okay, now this next story is from a St. Patrick's Day from just a few years ago. It seems like yesterday, and it is the famous Paula Deen Where's Willie Cain episode.
When you say Irish cream, it's got a little of the kick in it?
Irish cream in it.
Oh, beautiful.
Let me ask you something. Where's Willie Cain?
Willie Cain?
Uh-huh. I thought he'd come see me.
Maybe he did. Why don't I try to see
No, I don't think so. I hadn't seen him.
Oh, okay.
Will,
I'm
you
gonna
didn't
try
come
this.
to Savannah to see me?
Oh, this is good.
Isn't it delicious?
When you say Irish cream,
Okay, so I don't know what that was
How'd you
another
feel?
mystery. I didn't know. I was assigned by Fox and Friends to go down to, and where was that? It was somewhere
Savannah,
in
Georgia.
Savannah. Okay.
Savannah,
Now,
yeah.
did you guys know Savannah, Georgia has I think it's the second biggest St. Patrick's Day celebration.
That's fascinating.
New York City being the biggest, and you would think Boston, right?
Oh, yeah.
No, Savannah.
Chicago.
Chicago is a big one, too.
Yeah, but I think Savannah's second.
Savannah's-
A lot of
Savannah's
Irish in
up there.
Georgia. Who knew?
Yes. It's huge. I couldn't get a hotel room, so I was staying in the Hampton Inn way away, and I had to find my way into the city. But the parade, Paula Deen was there, so I thought I was going to do an innocent segment on her cupcakes, and they were delicious. But then she hit me with the Willie Cain, and I still don't know what it was. Why whether she was promised a Willie Cain, whether she had maybe done a segment with him in the past.
She has a little crush on him, maybe.
Yes,
She's obsessed.
undoubtedly.
No, they bring her on the TV show every 6 months or so, just to make him blush. She's obsessed with him.
It's great. Okay, so let's do some headlines because I'm not on Gutfeld tonight, but I'm in the as we say, the Gutfeld diaspora. I'm Gutfeld adjacent, and so I get the rundown every day in case I want to contribute something. And so I thought we would look at some headlines. And also, just to be frank, we were going to have Joe Machi on the show, but he's a busy comedian and he couldn't make it. Do you know, I think he missed his flight because there's a lot of flights canceled
It's
this
insane.
week, right?
Those lines are crazy. Have you seen that?
Yeah, what's
Very
going on, though?
problematic.
Is it just general
Government
airline
shutdown.
problems, or was it was an act of God related? Did it have to do with storms?
Oh, yeah, I don't know about that.
There's a string of tornadoes just hitting the entire United States right now. So it could have been.
Because I just assumed that it was a TSA issue with everyone calling out because they're not getting paid.
They've been canceling a lot of flights into New York, I believe.
Yeah.
My wife is coming in, and they canceled a couple.
Yeah. Well, luckily, guys like Joe Machi, the writing staff, Joe Machi, Joe DeVito, they can
So funny.
They can work
Funny
remotely,
guys.
and so Joe's got the stories, and Greg writes his monologue. He sends it out to the guys. They punch it up with the jokes, get it back to Greg. So it's not ideal that he's not in the building, but they can always survive. They can do well, and they can work remotely, which is great because all of us, everybody who works on Gutfeld, Jamie Lissau, the various comics, we're working like crazy. We're selling out rooms like nobody's business.
Love it.
We used to go on the road, and it would be like, okay, Saturday night at 8, it's going to be, probably going to be filled. But the other shows, maybe half a house, whatever. Now I go out of town, 5 shows sold out. It's unbelievable. It's the power of Gutfeld.
Yeah. I see
Really
those lines
is.
downstairs.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's like the old days. I was never part of those because I never did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. But the comedians used to say, if you did Carson and then Leno and Letterman, those late night shows back when, in the world when people still cared about network TV, if you did the Tonight Show or Letterman, your book was filled for the whole year. They booked you at the Comedy
Really?
Castle in Michigan. They booked you at the Comedy and Magic in Hermosa Beach. You were booked for 52 weekends after that appearance, and you could guarantee good ticket sales.
What if you didn't crush on Carson, though?
Well,
Even still?
yeah, I think, you know what? You never really bombed. I mean, there might be a couple of examples of people really not doing well on Carson, but the worst thing that would happen is he wouldn't have you back, or he wouldn't have you back for several years. But the way they did it back then, they were so careful with the bookings. They went around and they worked on the set, and they made sure you had a killer 4.5 minutes.
Right.
And so, you always do well. My first TV,
spot.
yeah, I did. I remember working on my first TV set in I think it was '99. I did Conan O'Brien. So I never got Tonight Show. I never got Letterman. But Conan was basically just as good back then.
Yeah.
For as a career maker.
Sure.
But I did it in '99. Had a good set, and then I did Comedy Central. Got my special in a few years later. But that was really the launching pad.
How do you decide your 4 minutes? Like, how do you? I know you get your best joke in, but you just do one, or like, how do you cut that down? I feel like that's hard.
Yeah, I don't think they're as hands-on now. I mean, TV spots are kind of like, it's not the big deal that it used to be. But in the old days, the booker from Letterman or Conan would come around and watch your set several times. They would take you, you'd get in a taxi, and you'd go around, and the Conan would call the clubs and say, "We're bringing a guy around. He's working on his set," and they would bring you around, and you would run your set over and over and over again. And then, you'd do like 6 minutes, and they'd try to chop it down to like 4.5.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And then they would say, "You can't do that joke." I mean, they were very hands-on on Letterman. They'd say, "No, Dave doesn't like that kind of joke. Don't do it." And then the comedians would all talk about, "Oh, they cut my bit here. They said I can't do this and that." So it was definitely more hands-on, but that's what you had to deal with to get on TV.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Now they just let anybody on.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, now it's like you got a hot clip on YouTube, or you got a video, and you can sell out rooms based on your social media. However, I'm not as savvy as the young guys with the social media. I depend on Gutfeld.
And it works?
It totally works. Plug the dates, you get out there, you sell them out. So what's on the show tonight? Okay, I don't want to give away his monologue, but it is basically about this new idea that women are leaving the new right. The new narrative is that women wanted to be trad wives, and now they're leaving the right, and they are becoming liberal again. Do you guys think that is plausible, or is it a narrative that's being manufactured by New York Magazine?
Well, it's funny. Me and Patrick live in two different sides of this. I'm more in the liberal world,
Yeah.
so I've only seen women be liberal. So I don't know many that are already going back. So what about you, Patrick?
I mean, my wife is pregnant with our 8th kid, so she's living the trad wife lifestyle. So
Absolutely. Did you see the actress the other day? She kind of was was signaling trad. What's her name? Jessie Buckley. She won the Oscar for Hamnet,
yeah.
and she said she wanted to have 20,000 more babies with her husband.
It's a lot.
Yeah,
It's too many.
I know.
Yeah.
He looked a little shocked.
20,000's a bit.
It's like,
I think the sweet spot is probably not 20,000.
8 is
A
wild.
little under.
8 is wild, but it's very. You know what? It's much more common now.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends, my Catholic friends, we're talking about 9, 10 kids. So, I'm not saying you. That's not, Patrick, a challenge to you. I'm just saying. I don't know why I said
You threw
9,
down
10.
the gauntlet.
Yeah, but they're having a lot of kids.
In the same spot. It's like 9, 10. I think the family my wife used to work for had like 12 or 13.
We used to see it a lot more. I mean, my mom's one of 7. She's a German Catholic family.
Yep.
And they just used to be, post-war. That's what you did.
Yeah.
I only know, I'm seeing more people I know only have 1 now. But I'm from the Northeast, so it's a little different.
Yeah. It is, the more the better. And we have a lot of people who grew up in big families, and then they choose to have small families. And it's like, don't you realize the benefits? Now, I'm one. I have 2 daughters. I wish we could have more, but let's face it. I was in showbiz. I was running around. I was trying to get on Conan O'Brien, and I should have got down to business and had a family earlier, but I didn't.
Could have had a comedy troupe.
I know. I could have like the Von Trapps, but but I say, if you say you got to practice what you preach, well, I waited a little too long. But if I could go back, I'm telling you, if I could go back, I probably wouldn't have made it in show business because I would have got down, had a family, and I would, it's not that important. Getting on TV, whatever, it all seems very strange to me now. This 20-year project to break into show business, and then I got married, and now I don't care about show business.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Yeah,
I know. I just got married about a year and a half ago, and I'm scared of one. So we'll see.
Well, I say keep going.
But going back to the question, do you think women are leaving the right and going left?
I think that because social media posing, women with their
pressure,
their sourdough starters and everything. You had, for some reason, I don't know what it was, but they were making sourdough bread like crazy, and my wife was making it too, but she wasn't posting about it. But there was a lot of social media baking bread, having the chickens, right? So trad wives, yes, and it all came in, and I think what happened was, as anything, social media creates a backlash, and then people say, "No, I'm anti-trad," and of course.
True.
So now New York Magazine gets in, this thing, and they say they want to make a trend. Here's all these women. I don't even know if it was New York Magazine or whether it was Vogue or whatever it was, but I'm using New York Magazine as a. It might have been the New Yorker, but they wrote this article. They saying that the trad wives are leaving in droves, and they don't want to be a part of it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, also I think, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but it's probably tough. I mean, things are expensive more now, and having two working parents is sometimes needed, depending where you live in the country. It's something me and my wife talked about. But, I mean, it doesn't really lean left or right, but I think you're right about the social media aspect. Now women feel this need to kind of be like an ally, be part of the, we can't do that anymore. And so I think it is a lot of pressure for women to stay in the same lane.
Yeah. Did you guys see this was a clip that was going around this week. It was Jerry O'Connell with Bill Maher, and he was talking about the women in his life. And how he has to tiptoe around them because when Trump won the election, for his second term, he said, "Well, that's the way it is." And he kind of said he just reacted in a way saying, maybe she wasn't the best candidate. And he said his wife and daughters almost got physical with him. They were so angry. And he was saying this to Bill Maher. Bill Maher couldn't believe it because this guy's not married and he doesn't, he's not going to take guff from any wife or daughter because he's such a male hedonist. But I just thought it was interesting that Jerry O'Connell still has to tiptoe around his family. I have a wife and two daughters, but I do not tiptoe around them because I'm a host on Fox News. They know where I stand on everything. But I thought it was an interesting thing that this discussion of, men tiptoeing around it's the flip side of the trad wife. It's the liberal wife with the husband. And I'm not saying Jerry O'Connell's conservative, but he certainly has to hold his tongue for fear of upsetting his wife and two daughters.
Well, I have the liberal wife, and I'm not very conservative. I'm kind of middle road.
Yeah,
I still have to watch what I'm going to say.
Yeah, you do. But not because you're afraid. You just want harmony in your home. Am I right?
Exactly. And even if I say something that's like, well, I get this side of it. Nope, wrong. Can't say that.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
That's very interesting.
Oh, what was me?
What does she think of Will's opinions? I'm sure she's exposed to them all the time, right?
Yeah. They're not very agreeable to Will's opinions, but it's okay.
Yeah.
She still likes Will.
Yeah.
Will treats me very well, so,
It is okay. This is a discussion I have with people. One of the top questions, because I do a Q&A at the end of my live shows, and one of the most popular questions is, how do you guys deal with Jessica Tarlov? They always want to talk about Jessica Tarlov. And they say, does Greg really get along with her? I can't believe that he does. And he does.
Yeah.
They both have small babies at home. They bond over the babies. She gives him advice. I don't know if she's, Greg's not exactly I don't think he's changed a diaper yet and doesn't plan to. But, they talk about kids. They talk about life. And they actually talk about politics in a way that is, even though sometimes it gets heated on the 5, Greg has a great appreciation for her and has nothing but good things to say about her in private. Whether people believe us or not, that's the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
It is definitely the truth. Yes.
Yeah.
We see that a lot. A lot of those comments, like, how can you have her on? You know, because you see one thing on TV, and it's just definitely not that way. And a lot of my friends are like, how's working with that saint Jessica Tarloff? So, you know, there's other sides.
Yeah, they can't believe that the enduring patience that she has,
sure,
right?
Exactly.
But you know what? Early on, because I used to do his show, Alan Combs, the late Alan Combs, you know, this was the foundation of Fox News. Probably their early top-rated show was Hannity and Combs. And Sean Hannity, if there's anybody that's identified with the right in this country, it's Sean Hannity. And yet he always had a wonderful relationship with Alan Combs and talks about it to this day. And it shows you that if someone like Hannity, who's a professional right-winger, can get along, then I think other people can as well. And it's because the people who can't envision it is because they're not around anyone like that.
Sure.
You know, and they do have to sometimes get out of their bubble. Do you agree?
A lot of people stay in their echo chamber. I think it's the worst thing you can do. I mean, you just have to listen to other people's opinions, whether you agree or not. I mean, you might miss something. We're all human. We're all have different opinions, and we get stubborn. And, yeah, I think listening to other people, and I do the same way, even if I completely disagree. Me and Will debate on this show constantly.
Yeah.
But we have respect for each other, and sometimes I see his opinion, sometimes he sees mine, and I think it's good.
Here's a great analogy that Greg uses. He says, when people ask him about Jessica, he says, if you want to get strong, when you go to the gym, what do? You meet resistance or you will not get strong.
Beautiful.
And he meets resistance every day with Jessica. And so when the issues come up, when Greg's planning what to do on the show, he has to think of Jessica. Every morning, he's got to think of her. What's she going to say to me, and how can I counter her argument? So without that strength, Greg would be a flabby conservative.
You need that toning.
Yes. Okay, so a couple of more headlines before we get out of here. President Trump's reaction to the Ayatollah's sexuality. I mean, isn't it funny that this is the kind of thing that it's actually quite a dangerous topic? Because we've heard famously I think the former president, if I'm correct, was the one who famously said there's no gays in Iran. We don't have them here, you know, and so because
statistically incorrect.
Yes, it's probably not the case, but if someone is gay in Iran, you know, they could be in trouble. Also, when you're talking about international relations, we're in a war with this country now, and apparently the leader, the idea that the Ayatollah's son, the idea is out there now that he may be gay. It's kind of a dangerous topic to talk about, but President Trump did it with a fair amount of levity.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, this is the headline here. Trump briefed that Iran's new supreme leader is probably gay. The president has priceless reaction. Patrick, do you have what he said, what Trump said?
It was just that he can't stop laughing every time it's brought up. That's the gist of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's brought up and he just giggles the whole time.
Which, you know, you could have, like my lefty friends are like, can you believe Trump is making fun of a gay, leader? But, there's some things that go behind that.
You know what he should have said? He should have gone back to the 90s and he should have said, not that there's anything wrong with that. Because that was the famous way that, and you know what? That's it's the way that Seinfeld dealt with that episode. It's great because it is edgy and you are making fun. They're taking an entire episode and they're essentially making gay jokes for the whole episode.
Sure.
But because they throw in that, not that there's anything wrong with that, it's a fun way to handle an awkward subject, and I think it's just fine. Okay, here's 2 more headlines here. Ozempic is ruining drinking for people, and that doesn't surprise me. The headline, I used to be a happy drunk. Ozempic made me a sad one, and the hangovers are horrendous. I'm not surprised because essentially, I don't know much about Ozempic, but I do know that essentially it does make you malnourished, right? I mean, essentially, it's taking away it takes away the fat, but it takes away some of the other stuff too.
It essentially fills in that hunger in your stomach. So it's I forget what it's called, but it's feeding your organs something so you don't feel hungry anymore.
Yeah.
But it's also breaking down bone. It's breaking down healthy muscle. It's breaking down. That's why people have those like sunken faces and
Yes.
stuff like that. Because it's doing more damage. And I can't even imagine just being on Ozempic, not eating all day, and having like 3 beers. It would just be insane.
It's like drinking on an empty stomach.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's not surprising at all. I think people need to be careful with it. My doctor friends tell me that it's unless you have diabetes and severely overweight, you shouldn't be using it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just be careful.
I'm only a little overweight, and I'll just keep drinking.
Yeah. Exactly.
Some corned beef.
No, and you got to have, you've got to, like for instance, St. Patrick's Day. You're on Ozempic.
Skip a shot.
Yeah, and you want to go out there and you have you put a couple back. Tell you the truth, I did dry January last year, and then when I came back, I was all excited. I bought a nice bottle of rye to start February, and I had a drink, and I'm a 2-drink guy. I have a drink when I get home, and then I have dinner, and then maybe an after-dinner drink. I had 1 drink, and I was hammered, as they say.
Oh, yeah.
I was totally hammered.
Yeah.
So
Send out that blood real fast.
Yeah. So that's going back a year. I'm a 1-drink guy now.
Yeah.
Essentially, that 1 month of dry January cut my tolerance in half, and I've never gone back. I guess it's probably a good thing, right?
It's healthier, yeah.
Yeah.
I'd say. Maybe they should do shot for a shot, Ozempic shot, and a shot of alcohol.
Exactly. Okay, the final story, Banksy unmasked, and he basically, speaking of Ozempic, he looks like kind of like a soft, overweight, regular old middle-class British dude. It's a real letdown.
I don't believe it.
You don't believe it's him?
I don't believe it. I think of all the things that Banksy's done and how tricky he is and how many years he's spent trying to hide that, I think this is another kind of ruse. And something will come out. I just don't believe it.
Yeah. I don't think I even knew that he was British. I assumed he was some guy from like the Lower East Side or something.
Yeah, he started in Soho, I believe, in London.
Yeah, but Soho in London, then he certainly came to the U.S. because he's done a lot of stunts in the U.S. as well, right?
Yeah, all over the world. I mean, I always thought it was a group of people. Like Banksy wasn't one person.
Yeah.
I always thought it was a group of artists that kind of like were a movement and were.
I bet that's the case. I bet there's a lot of things credited to Banksy that are not him.
Sure. Yeah.
Like, you remember Mark Kostabi? You guys don't know that name, do you? Kostabi World. Mark Kostabi was a Warhol wannabe in the late 80s, early 90s, and he hired art students to work for him, and they created his work, and he would just sign it. The kind of thing that Warhol would do. He had that kind of like, they called the factory, right? And Kostabi, he turned it into essentially a real factory. He was just cranking out low-grade artwork from art students, putting his own name on it.
Brilliant.
And he was very proud of it. But I think that Banksy probably did have some. He's a guerrilla artist, so he had some other guerrilla artists working for him, doing the spray painting and things like that, because otherwise he would have been caught a long time ago.
Yeah, you keep the style, you keep it similar, you come up with the idea, then you have someone else execute.
Yes.
I'm getting some ideas for this show. Like maybe I need to hire out to some low-level producers and
delegate our work,
sign our names to it.
Yes. Listen, it's what people in not just the art world, but people in media do as well, right? And even in some sense, Gutfeld has created kind of this world. So he can take off. I'm not coming into work today. Shillue, you got a guest host for me.
Yeah.
And now we do the shows on the road with me and Greg Gutfeld. Pretty soon he's like, Shillue, I don't even want to come on the road. Just slap my name on it and you and you sell the tickets. Guys, this was another great day.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for being here. It's Will Cain Country, wherever fine podcasts are hosted.